Well, not that there's anyone here, but here's the brake barrel to the P1000s. Alright, we want it significantly softer because I don't have a rig yet, and it's pushing my chair away. So we need...
So when you press with an X amount of force, or let's say a travel, the amount of force, let's say, kind of decreases. So you kind of like doing a bit of a non-willing trail braking, let's say, which could be an issue, but you have to kind of get used to it, and that's how you basically adjust or modulated your foot. Another issue I had was basically with release. The release of the pedal wasn't quick enough. It wasn't sharp enough. It was actually never to the standard I wanted, but you kind of get used to driving around it. The second combination we tried was the hardest spring, the brown spring, and the second hardest pads, which were the blue pads, as you can see. So you got a spring here and 4 blue pads. The feeling was better compared just to rubber pads. The return speed and the return, let's say, strength was easier to modulate. And the thing I liked more with this is because I did a lot of interchanging, I switched from basically one configuration to another. With just the rubber pads, I felt that the pedal actually got longer. So with the same amount of force, the travel of the pedal was longer, and it kind of took a little time to understand with regards to how much force I have to put, because the amount of force changes, obviously the amount of travel changes. So you kind of, there's two variables that are changing, and it kind of took me some time to actually get used to it. But with this, because the travel was less and the return speed or the return, let's say, modulation was easier, I actually felt more comfortable and more consistent with this configuration. The third combination we tried was basically the spring combination. So we have brown and green. Green is the second hardest spring here. And again, it's a GT3 combination. What I liked about this is it was stiff. The travel was less. I felt more control with regard to how much pressure I was actually inputting into the pedal. Obviously, because there's less travel, sometimes it can throw you off to how much you're actually pressing, because some people do want that kind of travel distance to understand how much they're pressing. But obviously, due to my single COT career, I was actually quite happy with the stiffness and the amount of travel, let's say, with this combination. The return speed was good, the return modulation was good, and honestly, having a spring or any sort of spring did really help my return speed, or the return speed of the pedal, which meant it was actually easier to modulate and trail brake. I would recommend sticking to spring sets that are only one stiffer or one softer than each other, because I actually tried the brown and red combination, and red is the medium, let's say, stiffness spring. It's third on the list. And when I was pressing the pedal, I could feel the red one compressing completely until I actually started compressing the brown, and that kind of two stiffness or double stiffness pedal feeling wasn't too nice for me, honestly. And finally, we tried a spring and 3 travel regulator combination, and obviously this was very stiff. The pedal travel length was very little. You had to put a lot of force into it to actually, have some sort of braking. Did I dislike it? No, actually. I mean, yes, it's very stiff and there's hardly any travel compared to the other combinations, but this is actually a good thing in one way, because you're not worried about the pedal travel, you can actually fully focus on the amount of force you put into the pedal, which can make your pedal performance consistent. But honestly, you can probably drive with this combination for, let's say, 20 minutes, but not an endurance race. And now you're probably asking me which one was my favorite combination. Honestly, I think I like the dual spring combination the best. The amount of pressure you had to put in was relatively good. It was controllable. It didn't really wear me out, honestly. But if I were to do a endurance race with long stints, I actually may prefer the spring pad combination. Because as you know, driving, let's say, 2 or 3 hour stints, you constantly have to brake, control, modulate your braking. It can get tiring, and for that reason, sometimes you actually need or would prefer a softer combination. Just a heads up, we would highly recommend you calibrating your pedal set every time you change a particular combination, because every combination stiffness and travel is going to be different, so I highly recommend you calibrate it. Before you start going through 20,000 different combinations, you probably do have an idea of what kind of pedal feeling you like, and this is pretty much, parallel with the car you drive also. If you're driving single-seaters, it's going to be on the stiffer side. If you're driving sports cars, it's going to be on the softer side. And you know best what kind of braking technique you prefer. Do you like carrying your braking into the corner, trail braking all the way? Or are you a straight line braker? Putting all these parameters into the equation, it's up to you to decide which combination suits your needs most. So our recommendation would be find a sweet spot, meaning find a combination that you like and work around it. Another advice we'd like to give is don't try a combination for just a lap or two. Give yourself at least, 5, 6, maybe even 10 laps, because you'll be surprised how you start adapting your driving style according to how your brake pedal feels. Once you find that sweet spot, just work on it and try getting better. And that statement basically concludes our PORP review. If you've liked this video, please press that like button. If you haven't subscribed to the iRacing Academy YouTube channel, please do subscribe, and I guess we'll see you in the next videos. Take care, bye-bye.
Everyone wants to be the Cadbury Bunny, because only he brings delicious Cadbury cream eggs, while others may keep trying. No bunny knows Easter better than Cadbury.
Seems better.
One wash,
Actually
it smells
moves now.
so clean. Downy, rinse and refresh, it's a dream.
So many parts. Oh my god. Alright. Do some cables. Okay. Oh, merde. We actually have our things online now. We kind of look like we're online. Hello. Mousy. Alright. How are we gonna go drive? I've still got wheels on my chair, so that's a problem, but we'll get there. Pardon me. Got the clips. Not there. Yes, there. Extra clips. Seem to have got a lot of things. One's not popping in.
Right side. Clear, clear, clear. Do have a little damage to the front.
Pardon me. How do we change the angle? I am a man.
Hey, you can't park there.
Hi guys, Soup here. SimHub recently came out with an update for the SimMagic haptic pedal reactors on the P1000s, the P2000s, or the P500s. And I wanted to go over my settings and why I have it set up the way that I have it set up. Hopefully it can help you out and can kind of streamline your setup. So in the recent update from SimHub, my jaw dropped because I didn't even realize this update came out. But it looks like in December of 2024, SimHub released an update. And instead of programming your motors from the Shake It Motors menu, which is where they used to be, if we go to motors output, you'll see at the bottom of the screen it says P1000s and the Rep 500 and TBRs. Those are now available as device with dedicated profile settings. If you click this button, add new device, and then go ahead and turn off your motor feedback in the Shake It Motors menu, you'll see that a new device will show up in your devices menu, and you'll see the SimMagic haptic pedal reactors. Now, assuming that they are plugged in and powered on, they'll show up as connected. Now what you'll see is previously in the Shake It Motors settings, you were only able to set a frequency for each pedal, each motor itself, individually. But now you can take each individual effect and you can change the frequency for each individual effect. There might be better settings for ACC, for Le Mans Ultimate, but for iRacing specifically, this is the settings that I recommend if you're trying to use these, not necessarily for immersion, but for getting faster on the track. So detecting your wheel slips, wheel locks, detecting your traction losses, and detecting when ABS is active and you're maybe squashing the brake a little too hard. Let's start here at the bottom. Let's talk about traction control. It would be cool if traction control, if there was a setting in the pedals for traction control, but unfortunately, the effect is not supported in iRacing. So there is no active information stream that can go from iRacing to SimHub that will tell SimHub when traction control is activated in order to enable an effect on your pedal. So let's just, we're not gonna use it. We can't use it, right? Wheel spin and lock, same thing, okay? The effect is not supported on iRacing, all right? So we can't use that. Now what we can use is something called wheel slip. And while it says iRacing does not provide any wheel slip information, it uses an RPM-based detection algorithm to detect when your wheel is actually slipping. So when your RPM spike and that wheel starts spinning a whole lot, SimHub detects it as a wheel slip and translates that to a motor rumble effect, right, in your pedal. So that's kind of the explanation, because some of you may look at this and say, well, why aren't you using this? Why aren't you using that? Well, the reason I'm not using it is because the effect's not supported really in iRacing. That's the bottom line. And remember, these settings are for getting faster on the track. This is not for immersion, right? If I wanted to go for immersion, I probably wouldn't even use pedal motors on my pedals. I would probably use motors under the pedal base and maybe in the four corners of my rig. But I'm going for using feedback from motors to get faster on the track. Since I can't feel the G-forces that I would feel in a car, I need to translate that to my pedals and vibrations. You can see, overall, going over settings from top to bottom, ABS active. I used to not use it, to be honest with you. I just used the lights on my wheel, but I finally decided that I needed to get that feeling. I needed to feel when ABS was active, so I decided to enable it. And some of you may be like, why did you enable it on your clutch? Well, the reason I enabled it on my clutch is because I want to be able to feel wheel lock and traction loss in the brake when I'm pressing it, which is what I have enabled here. But I also want to know when ABS is active, but I want it to feel very different than the wheel lock and the traction loss. So I've enabled it on my clutch because all my clutch is doing is clunking whenever I shift gears. You might be able to hear it as I shift gears. You might be able to hear that clunk in the background. Maybe, maybe not. But that's a 15 hertz clunk, quick 80 millisecond clunk that happens every time I shift gears, only in the clutch. Whereas the ABS is set to only be active in the clutch, and obviously it's only going to be active when I'm pressing the brake, right? Even though the brake is not enabled as one of the motors. So that's kind of the rationale behind it. I set it at 20 hertz too, because I want it to be real shocking. And so if you think about hertz, if you think about a frequency wave, right? The closer together a frequency is, so the more fine the vibration is, those waves are gonna be real close together, right? So it's gonna be very fine vibration. 20 hertz is farther apart. It's a little bit of a lower, so that will be a very clunky motor feel. It'll be dook, 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 instead of, you know? I hope you love my impressions as I do this. So that's the reason, and I have it set as an 80 millisecond duration whenever ABS is active. So when my ABS goes active, that clutch is clunking, dook, 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 and I know that my ABS is active in conjunction with the lights on my wheel. So I know I'm pressing that pedal just a little bit too hard. So that's the rationale behind ABS. Gear shift, there's really no good reason to have this other than it's cool, right? Like it's a 15 hertz. I set the effects frequency to 15 hertz. I have this set to 100%. I want to feel it, right? And when I shift those gears, I can feel that clunk. You can see it active on there. It's awesome, right? It's actually just cool to have. But I know a lot of people put the brake motor on and none of the other ones. I think it's kind of cool to be able to program ABS into the clutch. You still feel it in the brake, right? But it's not right behind your foot. That way you can leave that feedback for other things, like maybe when you're lightly braking and you want to feel traction loss. You're not necessarily activating the ABS because you're not smashing down on the brakes, but you want to be able to feel when are you braking that traction loss, which I'll talk about later on the really light tap of the brakes. Or maybe you want to even know that you are tapping the brake, right? So you want that little bit of vibration, because sometimes it's hard to tell when you're at 0 or 1%, when you're just coming out of a trail brake or just barely trying to ease into a corner. Wheel lock. So I have this one also set to 100%, because if my wheels lock, that's not good, right? Like you never want your wheels to lock when you're racing, right? No situation, unless you're like trying to avoid an accident. And even then, you're losing traction. You're not gonna control the car. So you don't want your wheels to lock.
Like that?
So obviously I have this one set at 1 Hondo P.
Hope you had your handy dandy notebook
I have it
out.
triggered when the brake reaches 1%, because I want it active at all times. I want to know as soon as my wheels lock, right? So gamma factor, you can see as I lower this value, it changes the curve above, right? Lowering the value makes smaller effects less intense and creates a more gradual transition between small effects and large effects. So if we were talking about bumps, for example, on the road,
The hell happened?
Hell yeah, good lap. Oh man, alright. Can you assess anything to hurt the wheel? The front does have damage.
Well, the new pedals are good so far. It's just a matter of getting used to the new positioning. I'm still also waiting on... I just took the casters off my chair. Waiting on some new bell ends to hopefully prevent me from sliding around so I can put some pressure on the brake. But I've also got the softest and the next softest springs in the brake, which is kind of what I had with the old brake, but this is a load sensor versus just positioning on the old one. So far it's kind of cool. The when the ABS kicks in, you certainly know about it. I'm sure I'll be doing some tweaking, but so far I'm digging them. Definitely better on a rig, but that could be my future now too. So far so good. That Ferrari does look good in black. Actually complete a lap. I don't know if I did. Yeah, I got one in. Apparently from a stationary start. Oh, well apparently they're here. Go see if I can find the new bell ends. Of course, I wanted to do this on stream, you know, because why wouldn't you? Alright, let's go, maybe try out the Super Formula at Hungaroring. Just replace the wheels on my chair with solid bottoms. Just as a way to, when I push on the brake, it doesn't push the chair away, at least for get us going at least. Oh, I forgot the chair reclines. Hungaroring! Tracks I'm still trying to get good at. Definitely seems a track at 2 parts, Hungaroring. I fixed it fine for some laps, just to get things working.
In front of you, he's in the middle of the track. He's in the middle of the track, man, going slow.
I can make them shorter, I can make them taller, I can angle the faces. A little bit of adjustability in the angle, but not much.
On your right, clear. Left side. You are
Sorry,
clear.
Gregory, I misjudged the chicane.
Yeah, you're good.
Very slow on the right. Slow in front of you, in front of you.
I'm the one that hit you.
Yeah, you're good. I checked up when I shouldn't have. You're fine.
Slow on the right. Good lap. Good job.
Sorry about that. I was trying to.
You're good, you're good.
Yeah, spotter couldn't figure out if I was clear or had a car on the right.
I was in your blind spot, so.
So many options.
Oh man, alright, can you assess anything? Did it hurt the wheel?
John and I were just reviewing the SimLab XP1 pedals, which you can view in the link above me right here. And we thought we'd take the opportunity of the pedals being on the rig in a nice, convenient place to be able to show you how to adjust these, but pretty much every mid to high-end pedal set on the market to your own liking, and what all the adjustments do and how it affects the way they feel. Right, let's run through the order in which you should do things to get your pedals feeling just right. To start with, the most important thing is get your heels exactly where you want them. This is the distance from the back of the seat to your heels. We can adjust everything after that. Once you've got your heels in the right place, the next thing we're going to do is set the pedal angle, so where your feet rest against the pedals without pressing them. To adjust this on most pedals, it's either taking some bolts out at the back, or on these SimLab pedals, we just undo these clamping bolts and you can change the angle like this up and down to suit your own position. Again, you want to have your heels at the base of the pedal, and then with your legs relaxed, the pedal face should just touch the balls of your feet. Once you're happy with where you've set them, just lock them in place. So now your heels are in the right place and the pedal faces are in the right starting position. Let's start with the throttle and talk about the adjustments we have available there. Firstly, we have pedal face angle, and it's going to be completely personal preference. You just want to feel like your feet aren't going to slide off the pedals upwards when you're pressing them fully. So the first and easiest adjustment to the pedal feel itself is the spring preload. Normally it's just by a couple of nuts, and all we're doing here is either compressing or uncompressing the spring. The more we screw this in, the more we compress the spring, the more preload there is, and it will mean that pressing the throttle to start with will be harder, and also it will be stiffer throughout the whole travel as well. More preload, stiffer throttle pedal. Set the preload to wherever is comfortable for you, and then if you have the option, make sure you put the locking nut in there, wind them together so that it doesn't move while you're driving. The next thing we might want to adjust on our throttle pedal is how high the spring attaches to the pedal itself. The lower we attach it, the easier it will be to press the pedal. The higher we attach it, the harder it will be to initially press the pedal, and the force required to continue pressing the pedal will increase with pedal travel. This is easily adjusted on these SimLab pedals due to the spring pin, but basically to move it up, we're going to undo that, select a higher hole, reattach the pin, and now that pedal is harder to press, and also the pressure increases with throttle position. The reason the higher up you place this, the stiffer the pedal is because you have less mechanical advantage, less leverage against the spring. So again, the lower you go, the more leverage your foot has against the spring, and the easier it will be to press the pedal. On other pedals, you may have to undo nuts and bolts here, detach them, move it, and reattach them. Some pedals will also have a separate throw adjustment, which is simply how far the pedal travels from 0 to 100%. This is an example of quite a short pedal throw. On these SimLab pedals, it's an adjustment at the base on the heel. If I unscrew this, you'll now see that the pedal travel is much longer. One final adjustment you might want to make to your throttle is the strength of the spring itself. The stiffer the spring, the harder the pedal. Now moving on to the brake. Once you have the heel position and pedal position set to your liking, the first and easiest thing you can do is change the preload, much like on the throttle. You can wind it in. The more you wind it in, the stiffer the pedal will be initially to press. You can also adjust how much travel there is in the spring by adjusting the preload. More preload will compress the spring more, meaning that there is less travel before we fully engage the elastomer. Much like the preload on the brake does the same on the throttle, so does the position and height at which you attach the unit to the pedal itself. The lower you attach it, the easier it will be to press the brake pedal. The higher you attach it, the harder it will be to press the pedal, and also the strength required to push it will increase the more you press that brake pedal. The next thing you may want to adjust in changing the feel of your brake pedal is the elastomer. Now, most brakes come with different elastomers these days, from a harder to a softer elastomer. Generally, the softer the elastomer, the more squidgy and spongy the brake will feel and the longer travel you will get. To change out your elastomer, take off all the preload from the brake and the brake spring. Simply take out your arm, change the elastomer, put it back in place, and reattach to your pedal itself. And then reset the preload to where you want it. Much like with the elastomer, you'll often be supplied with some different stiffnesses of springs, softer, medium, and hard, and they'll often come installed with the medium on your pedals. The spring is usually responsible mainly for the first part of brake travel, before the elastomer becomes engaged. As we mentioned earlier, this will also increase the initial stiffness of the brake pedal as well. Unlike on a throttle pedal, there is not a brake stop because you always want to make sure you can get to 100% braking force. So that's most of the adjustments you can make to your pedals. The clutch pedal is much like the throttle pedal.
All right. A fucking chair. Yeah. Winton. Dropping all sorts of stuff. Alright, you load up. Welcome to Winton.
at 1. He is the fastest car on the racetrack. 31.898. Sit back, keep that bitch on track.
Way up. You think I know this track? You're
Right
fine.
side. Clear. Get back to the rhythm. Do your thing.
Stone the flaming crows, mate. Well, the gas feels better, and I can feel the little bit of traction loss. ABS is hammering, so I'm going to turn that down, but you can definitely feel it when the ABS kicks in.
That looks good, dog. Keep it up.
I'll make friends with this car one day. Should be able to go like to the scenic view and get a little bit of Aussie sounds.
Great loud.
One of the things I like about the Aussie tracks, when the cars aren't ploughing around, you can get a little bit of kookaburra and bush bird sounds. Yeah.
Alright, bud, don't sweat it, man. Get that brother back, you'll get him.
Feel that hammering of the ABS. It feels like real ABS. Kicks in a bit early. I guess I am doing over 100 clicks, so...
Good lap.
Be interesting to see how it goes on something like a Lotus 79. That's supposed to crazy, man. Yeah, I still got the gas down. Oh. Fine, if I could update the front, lift those.
When you can set up reliable Spectrum internet in minutes, you can feel at home in minutes. You're not.
Hello, fellow sim magicians, and welcome to episode 2 of Tech Tuesday. And in today's video, we're going to talk all about ergonomics. Now, the word ergonomics might sound very complicated. Essentially, it is something to be implemented into a product design to be more suitable to the human body, and therefore make it easier and more comfy to use. And as you can tell, this is especially important in sim racing, and it covers all players within the circle as well, whether you are a rookie who just started out in sim racing or a seasoned alien in sim racing. Regardless of who you are, you would want your sim product to be as comfy and as easy to use as possible. So just to give you a few examples of a ergonomic design being used on a sim racing product, you can take a look at the ones that you're using right now. For example, you can see a grip slot design on various racing steering wheels, as the one you can see right here on the GTD. Some of the buttons and the switches on the steering wheel design that you can see, they are more than likely to be closer to where you'll be holding your steering wheel, so they are easier to access when you're using them. The seating angle and curving designs that you find on various seats on the market. And to explain why it is so important to have an ergonomic design, I have the P1000's adjustable pedals with me today to demonstrate how much an ergonomic design can impact your racing experience. So the main thing being taken into consideration of an ergonomic design for a pedal is your seating position, and that includes a few elements. The angle of your seating position, the angle between your feet and your legs, the height difference between the base of your body and your heels, and most importantly, the contact surface between your feet and the pedal. And all of these elements will have an effect on how comfortable the pedals are going to feel, and most importantly, how effective you'll be able to utilize the pedals. For a pedal that is badly set up, due to its poor positioning for your feet, you're going to have less contact surface between your feet and the pedals. And that means you're going to have to adjust your feet accordingly to the positioning of the pedal, creating unwanted tension in your muscles. And that means that you're going to be less effective on utilizing the pedals and generally having less control on your pedals. Conversely, for a pedal that is well set up, the position is more suited to your feet, and you're going to have more contact surface between your feet and the pedals. And that means you don't have to compensate for the positioning on the pedals, and it's going to feel more natural to use, in which it's going to create less unwanted tension within your muscles, allowing you to utilize your pedals more effectively. To show you how big of an impact it makes, we intentionally offset the P1000 brake pedals and try the brake. And as you can see, even with maximum force, it only reaches to about 70% max. And then we've done some quick adjustment to adjust it back to its appropriate position, and now it reaches to 80 to even 90% of brake force. And immediately you can see the effects of a properly set up brake pedal position, and to an extent, how ergonomics impacts your sim racing experience. Now you know the importance of an ergonomic design, you can see why such a design is being implemented into a wide variety of sim racing products, especially when it comes to something with as many configurations as a pedal. And with that in mind, next time when you hop into your sim rig, trying to get a good feel for all the positioning again and adjust them to your seating position accordingly, you'll be surprised by just how much of a difference it can make to your sim racing experience.
Make a decision before. Well?
Well, what?
What's with the hat?
Oh, this. It's nothing.
It's the loudest nothing I ever saw.
Boy, you just came mosey in here with a brand new hat.
Hey guys, Will here. So we've got a bit of a how-to video for you guys today. I've had the opportunity recently to jump into a couple of mates' sim rigs and been absolutely shocked and surprised. And sorry guys if you're watching this, but the way you guys had your pedals set up was absolutely terrible. So today what we're gonna do is we're gonna take it back to the fundamentals. Now, regardless of how you like your pedals to feel underfoot, there are a couple of things that are absolutely fundamental to making sure that you're getting the most out of the set of pedals that you have and making sure that you're able to drive quickly and consistently. So that is exactly what we're going to be going through in today's video. This is definitely one you're going to want to share with your sim racing mates. So let's dive in. So I have the Acertec Invicta hydraulic pedals installed on my daily driver sim rig, and their software is actually really clear and easy to understand. Now, the principles that we're going to be going through today are going to be pretty much exactly the same, regardless of what load cell or hydraulic pedals you happen to have on your sim rig. But if you are looking for specific instructions for your particular set of pedals, chances are we've done a review of them already, and we always include this same process in all of our full review videos. So if you just search Boosted Media, the pedals that you own, review, and then jump to the software and calibration section of that video, that'll take you through the exact process for your particular pedals. But as I said, all the same principles that we're going through today will apply regardless of what type of load cell or hydraulic pedals you may own. So let's dive in now. Now, the first thing that I'm going to suggest you guys do is actually, if you can, with the software that you have, save the calibration that you've got in place for your pedals right now. What we're going to be doing, chances are it's going to change the feeling of the pedals completely for you, and you will find that you will be slower to begin with. Muscle memory is a massive thing, particularly when it comes to braking in sim racing. So there is going to be a little bit of a learning curve here. You might hate it at first, but I would definitely recommend persevere with this at least for an hour or so. See how you go, but I would recommend save your calibrations first. So if you do decide that if you absolutely hate it and you just want to go back to what you had, you have that and you can just load it back in and you're back where you were. But I almost guarantee you that if you follow the steps here and you put a bit of time into resetting your muscle memory, you will find that ultimately you're faster and more consistent, which is of course the most important thing when it comes to sim racing. So save your calibration. Now you'll see here, these particular pedals have an adjustment for our top dead zone and our bottom dead zone, which is very important. If you don't have these adjustments on your particular pedal set, what I would recommend is just rest your foot on the throttle a little bit, just push it down a tiny bit before you start the calibration. And that is going to set your minimum point with a little bit of dead zone there. So we're going to hit calibrate, and then we're going to push the pedal to a little bit before the maximum mechanical travel here. So that's going to add a little bit of top dead zone without having an adjustment for it. So we'll go complete. And what that's done now is if I set those dead zones to minimum, you can see I can rest my foot on the throttle pedal and push it in a little bit before it actually starts to register anything. And likewise, it's going to reach 100% throttle input before I actually reach 100% mechanically on the pedal as well. So if you have the dead zone adjustments, just use those. And I'm going to go back to doing that right now. So I'm just going to push the pedal to 100% at minimum. And then I'm going to add those 2% dead zones back in again. Now there's two reasons why this is important. Firstly, if you have a habit like I do of resting your foot a little bit on the throttle pedal under braking, you don't want to be inputting any throttle unintentionally. So having that little bit of dead zone there will allow you to have a little bit of push on the pedal before it actually starts to register inside the game. You can see here the amount of movement that I have there before I start to register anything in the game. Likewise at the top as well, a little bit of dead zone there will ensure that you are in fact reaching absolutely 100% throttle input inside the game. Sometimes at the very, very top of the travel, the calibration can slip a little bit, particularly if you've got pedals that are using a load cell or a Hall effect sensor for measuring the travel on the throttle and clutch. You may find that you're a little bit slower down the straight maybe than other cars, wondering why. Quite often that can be caused by not quite reaching 100% throttle input as far as the game is registering, even though you are actually mechanically pushing the pedal all the way down to the ground. But for these pedals, a 2% dead zone at the top and a 2% dead zone at the bottom is absolutely fine for me. And you can see I'm able to rest my foot on the pedal a little bit before it registers inside the game, so I'm not going to have any unintentional throttle input. And I'm getting to 100% input there just before I reach the mechanical threshold of 100% inside the game. Now we also on some pedals have the option for a non-linear pedal map as well. So that allows us to adjust a non-linear curve to adjust the throttle response inside the game. Now, I generally will run a linear curve, as you can see here, for all three of my pedals. I do find, particularly with the brake, it can alter your muscle memory, but we'll talk about brake mapping in just a minute. So say, for example, you're driving a really high-powered rear-wheel drive car without traction control, so maybe a modern F1 car or something like that. You may find that you're losing the back end out of corners all the time and you just can't quite get that finesse in your throttle input. Something that looks more like this in your throttle curve may be a little bit beneficial for you there. You can see what it's going to do is it's going to roll on the throttle a little bit slower and then kind of jump up as you get into the throttle a little bit later on. So you can see here, mechanically pushing down to about 50% is only actually giving me 30% registered inside the game, and then it ramps up from there. Conversely, if you're driving a really low powered car and you're just finding you're not getting the speed out of the exits that you want, you may find that a curve that looks more like this will be beneficial for you, so you're able to get onto the throttle a little bit quicker and get away. Don't really find that it makes a huge amount of difference, to be honest with you, but for pedals that have the option there, you can play around with it. Now, most pedals, you can actually adjust these individual nodes manually yourself by dragging them around as well. This has become a pretty common feature on most pedal sets these days, but as I said, I just generally run a linear map for my throttle. So let's go back to calibration again now and talk about the clutch. Now, I have this adjusted pretty much exactly the same way as I have my throttle because I do like to have a relatively linear clutch pedal. Now, you can set up these pedals and a lot of other pedals to have a kind of two-stage effect where you kind of feel that bite point in the clutch and then roll over past that, just like what you would find in a lot of real-life cars. But regardless of the type of feel that you like in the clutch pedal, the calibration process is going to be pretty much the same. So again, we're going to hit calibrate. We're just going to push the clutch down to 100%, release it back to 0, and then add that little bit of dead zone just to allow us to rest our foot on the clutch without having any unintentional input and allowing us to make sure that we're getting to that 100% mark when we push down to 100% mechanically on the pedal. And as you can see, again, I've added that dead zone in, but if you don't have that dead zone adjustment, you can slightly under calibrate the pedal just to make absolutely sure that that is happening. So jumping across to the pedal maps again, you can see once again, I've got a linear response set up here. That's because I have a linear mechanical feel in my pedal. Now, if you've got your clutch pedal set up in a mechanically linear manner like I do here without a significant rollover point, then a linear map is absolutely fine. However, if you've got your pedal set up with a really clearly defined rollover or second stage, then what you're probably going to want to do here with your clutch map, and again, it is a very subjective thing, is set up a map that looks a little bit more like this with a flat area around that rollover point. And what that's going to allow you to do is have a bit more play within that small range and then roll off a little bit more rapidly. Now, how aggressively you want to be with this will purely depend on your driving style. But what you're then going to want to do is adjust this level here where it flattens out to match the bite point of the clutch inside the car that you're driving. So say, for example, if you're driving a Porsche Cup car, those generally have a bite point around the sort of 65 to 70% mark. So what you would want to do is have this around that range. And what that's going to allow you to do is make sure that you're able to mechanically feel where that bite point is and have it in exactly the right sweet spot for then releasing the clutch and getting underway. But if I was running this pedal in more of a sort of two-stage mechanical setup, I would probably have a little bit less aggressive a curve than that, have it something like this so that I can still have a little bit more finesse in my release once I'm underway, but still have a bit of a flat area around that bite point just to give me a little bit more control and a little bit more, I guess, scope of movement in the pedal without getting outside of that sweet spot for the car that I'm driving. I'm going to set that back to linear again for now because I have a linear mechanical pedal. And let's jump back into calibration now and talk about brake. This is where things get really, really important. Now, when it comes to braking, there's a couple of really important fundamentals to understand before we even get into calibration of the pedal. This is going to make the actual calibration process make a lot more sense to you guys. So the first thing to understand is that a tire has the most braking efficiency, is able to stop the car most quickly when it's actually slightly under rotating or rotating a little bit slower than the road surface is trying to make it rotate, but not quite locking up either. And that is the case regardless of whether you're driving a car that has ABS or not. So the goal with braking is always to try to make the most use of the tire, try to get the car slowed down as quickly as possible before you start to turn in, and then you can trail brake off, modulate your braking to allow you to input more steering angle and not ask too much of the tire. So you don't end up understeering, you don't end up locking up in a straight line. Now, there are a lot of other aspects that are involved there as well. Things like aerodynamic efficiency. Obviously, with cars that have high aero, you're going to be able to brake a lot harder as you're going faster and you've got more downforce on the car. As you slow down, the car is going to be more inclined to lock up. Some cars just inherently like you to brake in a straight line, get most of your braking done before you start to turn in. Other cars will respond better to really heavy trail braking and actually using the braking almost like a rudder inside the car to really kind of get the car to hook around and rotate mid-corner. So that will vary from car to car, but I wanted to just quickly show you an example here. This is a lap in VRS from the coach who actually did my driver training a couple of years ago now, Pascalis Gurkis, doing a hot lap in a GT3 car around Sebring. Now, I wanted to use this example because this is a car that does have ABS. So a lot of people would imagine that you're actually just wanting to mash the pedal all the way to the ground and allow the ABS to do the work for you. But you can see here, he's only actually braking to 75% in turn 1. As we come into turn 2, a little bit more, up to about 90%. And you can see again, just kind of feathering the brake into turn 3, I believe. I'm not actually keeping track of the turns here, but you can get the point here as we run through. He's not always just mashing the pedal all the way to, we'll go up to turn 7 here. Again, he actually is getting a little bit closer to 100% there, but still not just mashing the pedal. You can see it is a nice kind of finessed curve there as he's trail braking off, easing off the brake and coming into the corner. Now, VRS, what we're looking at here is a paid service, but there are a lot of hot laps available on YouTube, and I would definitely recommend having a look at some of those, particularly if you're really focusing on trying to get quick at one particular track to really understand exactly how the pro guys like Pascalis actually input the braking here. But you can see, generally speaking, he's modulating his brake at around that kind of 80% mark. Some corners a little bit more, some corners a little bit less, but you get the point there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the calibration of the brake and how you can actually set your brake up, regardless of what kind of pedal you have, to actually allow you to achieve what we were seeing there in Pascalis's hot lap. So again, you can see I do have a bottom dead zone here. We're going to ignore that just for the minute. And we're going to get into the calibration. So regardless of the brand of pedals that you're running here or how you have them mechanically adjusted to suit what you like to feel underfoot, there is a really important thing to understand here. So what you always need to have in your pedals, and what every good set of pedals will have regardless of how expensive they are, is some sort of clearly defined threshold point where when you push down the pedal, you're able to always push to a certain amount of force consistently without going over or under. So for me right now, with the way I have these pedals set up, I'm always able to push the brake to around about 80% braking pressure as I've got it calibrated and hit that marker pretty consistently. So if I just go like that, you can see I hit 83%, and I'm kind of cheating here because I'm looking at the numbers as well. But you kind of get the idea. You're always wanting to be able to hit that same point consistently. And what that feels like on every set of pedals will be a little bit different. So I can't give you a value here for how much pressure you're going to want to apply. Obviously, it will depend on your physical strength as well. But what we're going to do is hit the calibrate button. What we're going to want to do is push the pedal down to that threshold point that we just discussed, and then push it past that threshold point to the maximum amount of force that we would ever want to have to apply to our pedal to reach 100% braking force inside the game. Remembering that we're not going to want to reach 100% with an explosive input. We're wanting it to be a finessed, controlled input a little bit past that threshold point. So you can see, again, I've hit that 38 bar mark on these particular pedals, which is exactly the same as the calibration I had before. I'm going to release that pedal again, hit complete, and what that's allowing me to do is hit that 80% braking pressure mark, which is the point that you want to be able to sort of modulate around. And then I'm able to get to 100% if I want to without having to be absolutely explosive with my input on the pedal. So again, this is going to feel different depending on the pedals that you have, how you have them adjusted, but that is going to be the goal. Hit that threshold point, have that threshold point around that sort of 80% mark, and then you can modulate your input around that. And that is going to be the key to being able to drive quickly and consistently. Once you get your head around that, it's going to make a huge difference. And the number of people I see that actually have the pedal calibrated, so that first stage of braking where you're just kind of reaching that threshold point is actually all it takes to get to 100%. And then you just don't have any means to modulate around that point. That is the key. Now you can see again here, I've added a little bit of dead zone on the bottom. This is just to account for any slop in the pedal. This particular pedal doesn't have any slop, but again, I do have a habit of resting my foot on the brake. So you can see here, if I was driving and I didn't have that dead zone, I had my foot rested on the brake, I'm actually applying 2 to 3% braking pressure all the time, which obviously we don't want to be doing because that's going to be costing us speed down the straight as well as overheating our brakes. So I'm going to bump that back up to 6%. And again, that will vary depending on your pedals, just to make sure that when I'm resting my foot on the pedal, which is a bad habit, that I'm not getting any input registered inside the game. Now, again, we can go across to our pedal maps and we can add a non-linear response curve if you wish to do so. This is going to be a purely subjective thing. My advice would be to, don't play around with this too much because you don't want to be making changes that are going to impact your muscle memory. I think if you've calibrated the pedal correctly and you're driving the car correctly, you shouldn't really need to rely on this too much. But let us know down in the comments below if you do rely on a non-linear pedal curve, what you actually do there and how you found that to be beneficial. But for me, I just always leave this to be completely linear. And it's as simple as that, guys. Now, as I said at the start of the video, it is going to be a little bit of a learning curve, particularly if this is completely different from how you have your pedals set up normally. You will find that you're going to be slower at first. It probably will frustrate the hell out of you at first as well. And you're going to be thinking, what the hell is he talking about? But once you get your head around it, and it will take maybe an hour or so to really kind of get back to where you were pace-wise. But I am very confident that if you allow yourself the time it takes to adapt your muscle memory and get used to this style of calibrating, particularly the brake pedal, then it will lead to faster and more consistent lap times. And that's at the end of the day what it's all about. So let us know below down in the comments if this has helped you out. Let us know how long it took you to get your head around this, and do make sure you save your calibration that you're running right now if you are able to do so, or at least write down.
Indeed. I got some of the pot pie nuggets. Doesn't have to be dinner. I could try them tomorrow, but
Be careful going through there. Right side. Clear. Good lap.
Brakes are so much better. Over braking now. Pardon me. Good, that's off. Ergonomics are a bit off at the moment. The wheel's a bit far away compared to the pedals. Pedals themselves feel good. Just got to get it to the point where I'm not resting on the brake. I've got a dead zone in, but I'm still triggering a little bit of brake. At least I have an adjustable dead zone unlike the old pedals, so that's a good thing. Because I am using the softer spring, so I could always make the brake firmer, which will prevent the push. But I'll ramp that up. Make sure that the chair doesn't move. ¿Qué pasa aquí?
That was a good one there, man.
That is a really aggressive off track. I think I was even getting half the car off. Interesting, I'm getting a pulse for the gear shifts when I have gear shifts turned off. This is part of the wheel slope.
refocus, refocus. We still got a shot at it. All right, fellas, here we come. At your mark now. Go, man, go. Hard, 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 hard. Go, 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 go.
Alright, let's try with that shoes. Thank you. So I'm going to move the brakes, move the pedals back a couple inches, move the heel plate forward, go down a notch on the pedal plates. No, they are modular, they are very adjustable, so that's cool, but the they're close, not quite there, but gas feels really good, brake feels really good. Yes, the ergonomics need some tweaking. And the new feet on the chair seem to be better. So far so good. I'd like to be able to angle the pedals back a little bit, but that's just more where I'm sitting. And I could have fixed that. Still can fix that by getting the inversion kit. I just didn't want to get the inversion kit off the bat. We were coming in to see what's what. So these are modular pedals, so you can upgrade to hydraulics. You put a hydraulic brake on it as an add-on. Changes from elastomers to using hydraulics on the brakes. That's a possibility. The inversion kit, the clutch, which I didn't bother getting. I got a clutch on my wheel that I use. But yeah, the adjustability kit was really cool. Like this. Comes with elastomers and springs of various gauges, and also some spacers and things. We're using one of the spacers at the moment. Kind of cool. Aluminum, Sim Magic on it. And they have some nylon ones as well. Various elastomers of different grades, and the springs. So I just changed to use 2 springs to begin with because we were using a very soft brake. Because we're not in a rig, so it's trying to balance what we've got with what we've got. And other than some ergonomics, so far so good. When I first plugged the brake in, it wouldn't move. Which, you know, a formula brake is like that. It's pure pressure, and you can set this up that way. Well, that's not where I wanted to start. So yeah, once the stream is over, I'll do a little bit of adjustments on the pedals. Move them a little bit further away from where I am. Move the heel plate a little forward. And hopefully that'll be good for now. But overall, happy with the feel, happy with the adjustability. Would have been nice to be able to change the angle back, but there are other ways of doing that. It does have an adjustability where you can take the pedal face and move that. There's an articulation joint in the pedal. So I might try that. Just not going to bother with it now because, you know, otherwise I'd be on my hands and knees underneath the camera and not doing anything. But yeah, so far so good. The what I really like is it's all integrated. So I wanted the haptics I want an active pedal eventually, but even if you got the Moser set today, there's nothing on the gas for haptics. Now, iRacing doesn't necessarily send some of that traction data through because they worried about people putting in traction controls and things like that to circumvent the system. So there are certain things that aren't necessarily passed through, but other games will do it, like Le Mans. And we haven't tried that out yet. Also need to get WRC working with force feedback, but so far, so good. But yeah, definitely very modular, very upgradable. We sort of came in at the entry point, but with the haptics. And then SimMagic's working on an active pedal, and it'll fit into the ecosystem, so I might be able to then change the brake to a clutch or something like that. Nothing to worry about yet because that pedal's not out yet. But the Moser seems to have come pretty close to the Simu Cube at a lot cheaper price. It's like a third of the price. Half to a third, depending on which Simu Cube pedal you get. And the SimMagic pedal should be competing with the Moser pedal, so I'm expecting it to be about $800. Comes out in time for Christmas. So hopefully by then I've built this thing to such a point where SimMagic goes, hey, how would you like to try out a pedal? And I'll go, you know what, I would, thank you very much. That would be dandy. One thing at a time. But yeah, just on the initial practice, I'm braking a good 50 yards later and having much better feel on the brake, so happy with that. Could try something else. Oh yeah, VIR for Porsche Cup. Let's see how we like Vegas. That looks pretty.
Good lap, that's what we need. Good lap, man. Slow car on the bottom.
These ARCA cars are fun to drive. Kind of like an underpowered cup car, because that's what they are.
Got a slow car on the bottom. Slow on the bottom.
Oh, it grabs that tire pretty hard.
front of you, in front of you, in front of you. Inside. Clear. Outside, you're clear. Inside, inside, clear.
Are we checking up in the middle of floor?
Inside. Still inside. You're clear. Inside. Clear level.
Pardon me. Okay. Weird. Had no gears coming back in. I should have grabbed that Darkwood setup. I think I have it. I just wasn't even sure if this was fixed or open. I thought you were lurking there, buddy. Oh, it's always fixed? Okay. Well, that explains that. Be nice if the setup wasn't quite so pushy. That's right, it was a Bristol setup you posted. Oh mate, no worries. I've just been testing out the new pedals. Pretty good. They a little bit of tweaking, but generally very happy, especially the brake. But yeah, if I roll out early, just roll the corners, that should protect the right front. Love and attention? Well, the quick answer is the Jeep, but the other quick answer is whatever she wants. There's that too. We're looking at rearranging the bedroom so we've got a bit more airflow for summer. That may result in me getting a rig sitting in the closet. That being said, I'm in the same closet now, but on the other side of it, facing it. We shall see. Oh, don't hit the wall.
Slow on the top side.
I'm usually really good at hitting turn 4. It's
on the bottom. It's on the bottom.
an example of getting on the gas too early. The I started posting clips from Twitch to YouTube, and it's been going we're back. The shorts have been going stupid crazy on YouTube, and they're just clips I've been taking from interesting stuff that happens during the stream. That's been really interesting to see. Like, some of them are getting thousands of views. Alrighty, I'm gonna call it there, and then have something to eat with my wife, and then do some adjustment on these pedals, and I'll probably shout out to you tomorrow. Got the Super Formula Lights race tonight. I'm not normally streaming during the day, but we'll see how we go tomorrow. And then there's the GT3 race tomorrow night. Let's go find someone cool to raid. But the I'm using, put it on to if this pops up. I might have changed what window we're looking at. I'm using SimHub. Oh, wrong one. Using SimHub for driving a lot of things. Like I've got a haptic cushion. Highly recommend that. It's only like under 80 bucks. The Next Level Racing HF8. Man, that's one of the best editions I've had. But the haptics work through, you can use the SimMagic SimPro, but it doesn't give you as much as SimHub does. And you can see the two items with the red, that's stuff that iRacing doesn't give you. But then wheel slip based on RPM. So like, I guess if it spikes the RPM, it knows you've got wheel slip. And those things, it works really well. So I've got that, I've had that in the cushion. Now I've got it selectively under the pedals, and then I'll turn it down because the ABS was loud and really hammering the brake pedal. As if you've ever kicked the ABS in, it feels kind of like that. That's been really cool.
Hey guys, Will here. So we've got a bit of...
Oh, Will, we just watched that. Twitch. Wrong one. Long Beach. Didn't do any Long Beach. We'll do that tomorrow. Or Saturday. Whenever I'm back. Ooh, dirt officials. Oh, well, they're offline. That's not very good. Alright, let's go see Yucky. He seems to, every time I've been on, all he drives is the LMP3. But he's really good at it.
Hey! Bust.